How can one accusation at a family dinner erase decades of trust in seconds? Why did my own son scream that his wife never lies before knowing the truth? And how did a single calm witness turn their certainty into silence? Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button, and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, subtle as they were. The way Naomi's eyes would narrow whenever I spoke, the way Caleb would glance at her before responding to anything I said, the way Diane would sigh, that particular exhale that meant she was about to dismiss whatever I just contributed to the conversation. But I didn't see it. Or maybe I did, and I just chose to believe that family meant something more than politics and power plays. The restaurant was called Morton's Corner, a mid-scale place with burgundy booths and soft lighting that was supposed to make everyone look better than they felt. It was Naomi's choice, of course. Everything lately was Naomi's choice. Where we ate, when we met, what topics were acceptable for discussion. I arrived first, as usual. Punctuality was one of those old-fashioned values that apparently marked me as out of touch. I ordered water and waited, watching the entrance, hoping this dinner would somehow be different from the last 3 gatherings we'd attempted. Caleb and Naomi arrived together, her hand tight on his arm like she was steering him. My son looked tired, 29 years old and already carrying the weight of someone else's expectations. He'd inherited my height, but not my patience, and lately, not my respect either. "Dad," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. No warmth in it, just acknowledgement. "Caleb, Naomi." I nodded to her. She offered a smile that never reached her eyes. "Hayes." She always used my first name. Never Dad, never any term that implied connection. Just Hayes, flat and professional, like I was a colleague she barely tolerated. Diane showed up 10 minutes later, breathless and apologetic in that way that somehow made everyone else feel like they'd inconvenienced her by being on time. My ex-wife had perfected the art of making her chaos everyone else's problem. Sorry, she said, squeezing in next to Naomi. Our traffic was insane. It was 7:15 on a Tuesday. There was no traffic. We ordered. Naomi dominated the conversation, talking about her latest social media campaign, some boutique fitness brand that was giving her free classes in exchange for exposure. Caleb nodded along, adding enthusiasm where required. Diane asked questions that weren't really questions, just setups for Naomi to talk more. I ate my soup and listened. This was the role I'd settled into over the years, the listener, the steady presence, the one who showed up and paid attention while everyone else performed. "You're quiet tonight, Hayes," Naomi said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Something on your mind?" "Just enjoying the meal," I replied. "He's always quiet," Diane said, waving her hand dismissively. "That's just Hayes. Present, but not really present, you know?" Caleb shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. Good. At least some part of him still remembered that I was his father, not just some background character in his wife's narrative. The entrees came. Chicken for Naomi, steak for Caleb, salmon for Diane, and pasta for me. We ate in relative silence, the kind that felt heavier than conversation. Then Naomi's hand went to her purse. It was a large designer bag, cream-colored leather with gold hardware. She'd left it on the booth beside her, wedged between her hip and the wall. Her expression changed as she rifled through it, first casual, then concerned, then alarmed. "What's wrong?" Caleb asked immediately. "My money," she said, her voice rising. "The cash I had in here. It's gone." "Are you sure?" Diane leaned over, peering into the bag like she could somehow spot what was missing. "Of course I'm sure." Naomi's face was flushing now, anger mixing with something else. Calculation, maybe. "I had $800 in here. 800. I counted it before we left because I was going to deposit it tomorrow." "Maybe you left it at home," Caleb offered. "I didn't leave it at home." Her voice was steel now. "I specifically remember putting it in the inside pocket. Right here." She pulled the pocket open, showing us the empty space. Someone took it. The table went silent. I could feel the shift in the air, the way their eyes moved, calculating, assessing, and then, like a spotlight swinging across a stage, their collective attention landed on me. "Hayes," Naomi said slowly, "you were sitting on this side earlier." "I've been across from you the entire time," I replied evenly. "No," she shook her head. "When I went to the restroom, you moved over here to let Diane in when she arrived. I saw you near my purse." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice calm. "I was never near your purse, Naomi. I stood up, Diane slid in, I sat back down. That's it." You were right next to it, she insisted. Right next to where I left it. I didn't touch your purse. Then where's my money? I don't know, but it wasn't me. Caleb was staring at me now, his expression hardening. Dad, if you needed money. I don't need money, I cut him off, and I didn't take anything from anyone. Naomi doesn't lie, Caleb said, his voice rising. She doesn't make things up. If she says the money was there and now it's gone, then maybe she miscounted, I said. Or maybe she did leave it at home. Or maybe it fell out somewhere else. But I didn't take it. This is unbelievable. Naomi's voice carried across the restaurant now, and I could see other diners turning to look. I can't believe you're sitting here, lying to our faces. I'm not lying. You are. Caleb's hand hit the table, rattling the silverware. You're sitting there, calm as anything, like this is all perfectly normal, like you didn't just steal from my wife. Caleb, no. He pointed at me, his finger shaking. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to play the victim here. Naomi never lies. She doesn't. So if she says you were near her purse, you were near her purse. If she says the money's gone, it's gone. And if you're the only person who had access... I didn't have access, I said, but my voice was drowned out. You did. And now you're trying to manipulate everyone, make us doubt what we know happened. That's what you do, isn't it? You sit there, all quiet and reasonable, and you make everyone else feel crazy for calling you out. The restaurant had gone quiet around us. I could feel eyes on our table, judgment forming in the silence. A young couple at the booth behind us had stopped eating. An older man at the bar had turned on his stool to watch. Diane was shaking her head, her expression pained. Hayes, if you just admit it, we can move past this. There's nothing to admit. $800 doesn't just vanish, Naomi said. And I know what I had. I know where I put it, and I know you were the only one near my purse. I wasn't near your purse. Stop lying. Caleb's voice cracked with emotion. Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing all of us. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Someone who'd decided I was guilty before asking a single real question. Someone who believed his wife's accusation without hesitation, but doubted his own father without thought. I didn't take your money, I said one more time, quietly, directly to Naomi. She held my gaze, her expression triumphant. Yes, you did. I opened my mouth to respond when something shifted in my peripheral vision. A waiter, mid-30s, carrying a water pitcher, had stopped a few feet from our table, frozen mid-step. Pitcher tilted, staring, not glancing, staring. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, confusion, the look of someone who knows something and hasn't decided whether to speak. Our eyes met for half a second. Then he turned and walked back toward the kitchen, our glasses still empty. I think we should go, Diane said, brittle. This isn't the place for this. Agreed, Naomi said, already gathering her things. I can't sit here pretending everything's fine. Caleb stood abruptly, napkin tossed on the table. He didn't look at me, didn't say goodbye. Just followed Naomi out, shoulders tight. Diane hesitated. Hayes, I don't know what to say. Then don't, I said. She left. I sat alone in the booth as the restaurant's normal noise returned. The waiter came back, avoided my eyes, cleared the plates. I paid, left a tip, stepped into the cool night air. My hands were shaking, not from fear or anger, but from the realization that I'd lost my son's trust in 20 minutes, and nothing I said here could get it back. But the waiter's face stayed with me. He'd seen something. The house was quiet when I got home. Too quiet. The kind of silence that magnifies every sound. I stood in the dark kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The microwave clock blinked 9:47. Headlights passed outside, briefly washing the ceiling. I should have been angry. Calling Caleb, forcing him to listen. But I wasn't angry yet. I replayed the scene, Naomi's performance, Caleb's instant defense, Diane's weary disappointment. Smooth, practiced, like a routine they'd run before. Maybe they had. I turned on the light, filled a glass with water, drank it, filled it again. The repetition steadied me. When had it started? When had I become the problem? I sifted through memories. Caleb's wedding, my speech, heartfelt, maybe long, Naomi's smile. Later, overhearing her call it, so typical Hayes. Thanksgiving, the good wine I brought. Diane said it was showy. Caleb agreed. Naomi laughed. Christmas, tools I'd bought for Caleb. Naomi's comment about practical gifts said like an insult. I'd stayed quiet every time, birthday dinners, promotions, Sunday lunches, Always the same small cuts, tolerated, never valued, dismissed before finishing a sentence, attempts to connect reframed as intrusions. I told myself it was normal, that it wasn't personal. It was. I went to my home office, the one place that stayed under my control, files aligned, desk clear. I opened the drawer marked personal records. Inside were remnants of my marriage to Diane. Notes, cards, counseling letters, emails. I didn't need to read them to remember the message. I was too passive, too accommodating, peaceful to the point of invisibility. She'd left because I didn't fight, because I chose calm over conflict, because I didn't demand respect, and she'd taught Caleb the same lesson, that my restraint was weakness. Naomi had simply recognized the pattern and taken advantage of it, marginalized me, erased me, confident I wouldn't push back. Because I never had. I closed the folder, put it away. My hands were steady now. I thought about the waiter again. That look, that pause. He knew something, and so did I. Respect isn't given, it's taken. And I'd spent 30 years giving mine away. The manufacturing plant sat on the east side of town, a sprawl of warehouses and offices from the 70s. I'd worked there for 26 years, starting in inventory and rising to director of procurement. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but it was real. I arrived early Wednesday before the main shift. The parking lot was nearly empty, a few cars from maintenance and overnight security. The sunrise washed the sky in gray and orange. Inside, the air smelled of metal, machine oil, and break room coffee. I liked that smell. It was honest. My office overlooked the warehouse floor, rows of inventory waiting to become something useful. I made coffee in the small pot on my filing cabinet. Strong, black. The same way I'd drunk it since I was 20. As it brewed, I checked my email. Vendor quotes, delivery schedules, a note about a delayed shipment, routine, manageable. And that was the contrast that had been bothering me. Here, my word mattered. When I promised delivery, it happened. When I set a price, it held. When I decided something, it affected jobs, money, the whole operation. Here, I wasn't invisible, but at home, in my family, I was background noise. Taryn from accounting stopped by around 8:30. She was in her 40s, competent, no nonsense. Morning, Hayes. Got those quarterly reports you wanted? Thanks, Taryn. How's the budget looking? Tight, but manageable. We're under on shipping costs, over on raw materials, balances out. Good. Let me know if anything shifts. Will do? She paused at the door. You okay? You look tired. Long night, I said. She nodded and left, not pushing. That was the thing about work relationships. They respected boundaries. Around 10, I went down to the warehouse floor. I did this most days, walking the aisles, checking inventory, talking to the workers. It kept me connected to the actual work. Reminded me what all the paperwork was really about. Miguel was operating a forklift near the loading dock. He'd been here 15 years, longer than some of the managers. Mr. Rellan, he called out when he saw me. Need something? Just checking in. How's the new hydraulic system working out? Better than the old one, smoother, faster. He grinned. You made a good call on that vendor. Glad it's working. Hey, you hear about Simmons' kid? Got into state, full ride. That's fantastic. Tell him congratulations for me. Will do? I moved through the warehouse, exchanging greetings, checking quality, making mental notes. These people respected me, not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. Because I showed up, did the work, made decisions that affected their livelihoods, and didn't take that responsibility lightly. Back in my office, I sat at my desk and stared at the phone. Caleb worked in sales for a software company, not a big outfit, but stable, growing. He'd been there 4 years, doing well enough, making decent money. What he didn't know, what I'd never told him, was that his company's biggest client was a firm I'd helped connect them with. A casual conversation at a conference, an introduction, a handshake. Nothing formal, nothing that required credit. But that client accounted for 30% of his company's revenue. And if that relationship ever shifted, if that contract ever went away, Caleb's company would feel it immediately. It was leverage I'd never wanted to use. Leverage I'd hoped I'd never need. I picked up the phone, put it down, picked it up again. Not yet. Not like this. But the awareness was there now, solid and unmovable. I had power. I'd always had power. I just hadn't been willing to use it. The question was, what kind of man does that make me? A patient one, I'd always told myself. A measured one, someone who thinks before acting. But maybe Diane was right. Maybe I was just scared. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Victor Hale. I was your waiter last night at Morton's Corner. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. "When?" His response came immediately. "Today. Coffee shop on Birch Street, 4 p.m. I sent back a single word. "Okay." The coffee shop was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and Edison bulbs and a chalkboard menu that took 10 minutes to decipher. I arrived at 4 exactly and found Victor Hale already sitting at a corner table, 2 cups in front of him. He stood when he saw me, extending his hand. "Mr. Rellan, thanks for coming." "Just Hayes," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. Up close, he looked older than I'd first thought. Maybe 37, 38. Lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. "I got you a black coffee," he said, gesturing to the cup. "Figured you for a straight coffee guy." "Good guess." We sat. The shop was moderately busy, enough ambient noise that our conversation wouldn't carry, but not so crowded that we couldn't talk freely. Victor wrapped his hands around his own cup. "I probably shouldn't be doing this. Could cost me my job if anyone finds out." "I won't say anything," I replied. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I believe you. You've got an honest face. Which is funny, considering what happened last night. You saw something." "I did." He took a breath. "Look, I've been waiting tables for 12 years. You see a lot of things, arguments, proposals, breakups, people getting fired over dinner. But what I saw last night, that bothered me, really bothered me." "Tell me." "Your daughter-in-law's accusation, about the money." "She's not my daughter-in-law anymore," I said quietly. "Not after that." Victor nodded slowly. "Here's the thing. I was working the section next to yours. I saw your whole meal. I saw where everyone sat. I saw when you stood up to let the older woman in." "My ex-wife." "Right. And I saw where that cream purse was the entire time. It never moved from where the younger woman put it, and you were never close to it. Not once." My chest tightened. "You're sure?" "Positive. You stood up, moved maybe 2 feet to the side. The older woman slid in. You sat back down across from them. The purse stayed wedged against the wall the whole time. You couldn't have reached it if you'd tried." "Why didn't you say something last night?" "I didn't know what I was watching at first. And by the time I realized what was happening, it had already escalated. I'm not supposed to get involved in customer disputes. Management policy. We're supposed to stay neutral, let people work it out themselves. But you're telling me now. Because I went home last night and couldn't stop thinking about it. The way they came at you, the way everyone just believed her without question, and you just sat there, taking it, not fighting back." He shook his head. "That's not right. Someone needed to know the truth." I took a drink of coffee. It was good, rich, and dark. "What else did you see?" "That's the other thing." Victor leaned forward slightly. "About 20 minutes before the accusation, your daughter-in-law went to the restroom. When she came back, she had this look on her face. Satisfied, you know? Like she'd just won something. And she kept glancing at you during the meal, like she was waiting for the right moment." "You think she planned it?" "I think she knew exactly what she was doing." He paused. "There's something else. The restaurant has security cameras. They're mostly focused on the register and the front entrance, but there's one that covers the dining area. Your booth would be in frame." "Can I get that footage?" "Not directly. Management keeps it for 30 days, but they won't release it without a legal request or a police report. And honestly, for something like this, the police probably wouldn't bother. But if there was another incident, another reason to review the footage." Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. "What kind of incident?" "I don't know yet," I said truthfully. "But if the opportunity presented itself, would you be willing to help?" He was quiet for a long moment, weighing something internal. "If it meant proving the truth? Yeah, I would." "Why?" I asked. "Why risk your job for someone you don't know?" "Because I've got a daughter," he said simply. "She's 16, and I'm teaching her that the truth matters, that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Can't teach her that if I don't live it myself." I felt something shift in my chest. Respect, maybe, or recognition. This man understood something fundamental that my own son had forgotten. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me yet. We haven't solved anything." "No, but you've given me something I didn't have before." "What's that?" "Confirmation that I'm not crazy." Victor smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. "You're definitely not crazy. Outnumbered, maybe. But not crazy." We finished our coffee, working through details, the camera angles, timing, the restaurant layout. Victor sketched a quick diagram on a napkin. "If they come back," he said, "and she tries that again, I'll be watching. This time, I won't stay quiet. And if they don't come back, then you invite them. Create the moment." I folded the napkin. That's risky. So is letting a lie stand. We exchanged numbers. Victor left for his evening shift. I stayed a few minutes longer, watching people pass, weighing possibilities. Truth mattered, but timing mattered more. Push too hard, and it looked desperate. Wait too long, and the moment vanished. I needed leverage, the kind that couldn't be brushed off. My phone buzzed with a reminder. An appointment the next day with Gerald Patterson, company counsel. A routine quarterly meeting. But Gerald wasn't just a lawyer. He understood power, how to move pieces without revealing the board. Maybe routine wasn't what I needed. I paid and left as the sun dropped low, the sky turning amber and purple. The air had that early autumn sharpness that made everything feel precise. I drove home slowly, avoiding the highway. By the time I pulled into my driveway, a plan had begun to form. Not revenge, something quieter, more exact. Inside, I went straight to my office and pulled a different folder. Financial records, family, checks, agreements, support payments. When Caleb bought his house, I covered the down payment, $20,000. Supposed to be repaid, never was. When Naomi started her consulting business, I provided $15,000 through Caleb. Framed as a loan, later called a gift. When Caleb's car broke down for good, I co-signed on a new one, $32,000. My name, my credit, $67,000. All told, not counting smaller amounts. The quiet help a father gives because that's what fathers do. But support can be withdrawn. Credit reconsidered, generosity reframed. I wasn't going to use it. Not yet. Maybe never. But knowing it was there, knowing I had options, gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Control. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Rellan?" A woman's voice, professional, clipped. "This is Nia Ashford from Brookstone Financial. I'm calling regarding the co-signed auto loan for Caleb Rellan. We've been trying to reach him about a late payment, but he's not responding to our calls." "How late?" 34 days. One more day and it hits 60, which triggers our secondary protocols and affects both credit scores on file. "I'll take care of it," I heard myself say. "We need payment by end of business tomorrow to avoid further action." "You'll have it." I hung up and stared at the phone. Caleb was missing car payments. Caleb, who'd been so quick to call me a thief, couldn't even manage his own finances. The irony was almost funny, almost. I made a note to transfer the money in the morning, not because I wanted to help him, but because damaging my own credit score to make a point was stupid. This was about strategy, not spite. Tomorrow, I'd talk to Gerald, get the legal framework in place, understand my options, make sure every move I made was airtight and defensible. Then I'd wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for them to feel secure enough to make another mistake. And when they did, I'd be ready. Gerald Patterson's office was downtown, in one of those renovated historic buildings that charged premium rent for exposed beams and original hardwood floors. His firm specialized in corporate law, but Gerald had been my friend for 15 years, ever since we'd met at a procurement conference in Chicago. He was waiting for me when I arrived Thursday morning, coffee already brewing in the small kitchenette off his main office. Tall, lean gray hair cut short, wire-rimmed glasses that made him look more like a professor than a lawyer. "Hayes," he said, shaking my hand. "Right on time, as always. How's life in manufacturing?" "Stable," I replied. "Yours?" "Chaotic in that controlled way that keeps the lights on." He poured 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. "So, quarterly review, right? Or is this something else?" I'd known Gerald long enough to skip the pleasantries. "It's something else." He gestured to the chairs by his desk. We sat. He waited, patient, giving me space to start. "I need to understand my legal position on some family financial matters," I said, specifically regarding money I've provided to my son over the years. Gerald pulled out a legal pad and pen. "Loans or gifts?" "Framed as gifts at the time, but there's documentation that suggests they might have been loans with implied repayment expectations." "How much are we talking?" "Approximately $67,000 over 3 years. Plus, I'm a co-signer on a car loan currently in late payment status." Gerald wrote this down, his expression neutral. "And why are you asking about this now?" "Family situation has deteriorated. I need to know my options." "Options for what? Recovery, leverage, protection?" "All 3. He nodded slowly. Okay, let's start with the basics. Do you have any written agreements, promissory notes, emails discussing repayment? Some emails, early ones where repayment was mentioned, nothing formal. Verbal agreements? Initially, yes, but they evolved into gifts over time, or at least that's how they were treated. Gerald tapped his pen against the pad. Here's the reality. In most jurisdictions, if you give money to a family member without a clear written agreement specifying it's a loan, the courts will generally treat it as a gift. You'd have a hard time recovering it legally. I figured as much. However, he continued, there are other considerations. The co-signed loan, for instance. You're legally obligated on that debt. If he defaults, your credit takes the hit. You'd have grounds to sue him for damages if that happens, though family court judges tend to be sympathetic to parent-child dynamics. What about the fact that I've been providing financial support while being accused of theft? Gerald's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? I told him about the restaurant, the accusation, the public humiliation, Naomi's certainty, Caleb's immediate belief without question. When I finished, Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, that changes things. How? If someone is accusing you of theft while simultaneously accepting your financial support, that creates a question of character and credibility. It's not illegal, but it's powerful context if this ever became a he said, she said situation. There's a witness, I said. The waiter. He saw the whole thing, confirmed I was never near the purse. Can he testify to that if needed? He says he will. Gerald made more notes. And there's security footage? The restaurant has cameras. The waiter thinks my booth would be in frame. That's your evidence right there. If you can get that footage, you have proof of innocence. How do I get it? Legally? You'd need to file a police report, which would prompt an investigation, which would give you grounds to subpoena the footage. But for an alleged theft of $800 with no physical evidence and no desire by the victim to pursue charges, most police departments won't prioritize it. So I'm stuck? Not necessarily. Gerald leaned back in his chair, thinking. There's another approach. If another incident occurs at the same restaurant, something that requires security review, the footage from that night might still be in the system. Cameras typically record over old footage after 30 days, but if there's a reason to preserve it, they keep it longer. What kind of incident? Anything that creates liability for the restaurant. A slip and fall, a dispute over billing, alleged food tampering, something that makes them review their security protocols. I understood what he was suggesting without him saying it directly. That seems complicated. It is, and ethically questionable, depending on how you approached it. He held up a hand. I'm not advising you to create a false incident. I'm simply explaining how the system works. Understood. Let's talk about the other angle, Gerald said, switching gears. Financial boundaries. If you want to protect yourself from further exploitation, you need to establish clear limits. That means no more gifts, no more loans, no more bailouts. You document everything from this point forward. If he asks for money, you decline. If he needs help, you refer him to financial counseling. You create a paper trail that shows you're no longer an open wallet. That won't go over well. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to protect you, both financially and legally. We spent another hour going through details. Gerald drafted a letter, nothing official, just a personal statement outlining the financial support I'd provided and my intention to discontinue such support moving forward. It was addressed to no one, dated and witnessed by his secretary. Legal documentation that I'd made a formal decision to establish boundaries. Keep this in a safe place, Gerald said, handing me the letter. If things escalate, if accusations become more serious, this shows your state of mind at a specific point in time. It demonstrates you are thinking clearly, acting deliberately, not reacting emotionally. Thank you, I said. Hayes, can I ask you something off the record? Sure. What's your end game here? What do you actually want? I thought about that. What did I want? To be proven right? To make them apologize? To watch them suffer the way they'd made me suffer? I want the truth to matter, I said finally. I want there to be consequences for lying. And I want my son to understand who he became when he chose his wife's word over mine without a single question. Gerald nodded. Those are reasonable goals, but understand that the truth mattering and people accepting the truth are two different things. You can prove your innocence and still lose your son if he's not willing to see it. I know. And are you prepared for that? I don't have a choice. The relationship is already gone. I'm just deciding whether to let the lie stand or force the truth into the light. Then make sure you're forcing it for the right reasons, Gerald said. Not revenge, not anger, but because you need to live with yourself afterward. I left his office with the letter in my briefcase and a clearer sense of direction. The legal groundwork was laid, the boundaries were defined. Now I needed the opportunity. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Diane. Caleb is very upset. You need to apologize to Naomi and make this right. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it without responding. In my email inbox, there was a message from Caleb's company, a routine newsletter, the kind they sent to clients and partners every month. I usually skimmed it and archived it. This time, I read it carefully. There was a feature article about their recent expansion, their growing client base, their success in the regional market. They mentioned their top 3 clients by name. One of them was the company I'd introduced them to 4 years ago. The connection I'd made casually, without expecting credit or recognition. I forwarded the email to myself with a note in the subject line, context, October 2025. Then I archived it and drove to the bank. The branch manager, Patricia Owens, knew me from years of routine business. I'd refinanced my house through her. She'd handled my investment accounts. When I walked in and asked to speak with her privately, she took me to her office without hesitation. Hayes, what can I do for you? I need to review the status of a co-signed auto loan and understand my options for removing myself as a co-signer. She pulled up the account on her computer. This is the loan for Caleb Rellan? Yes. I see there was a late payment recently, brought current 2 days ago. By me? She nodded, understanding. Removing yourself as a co-signer is difficult. The lender would require the primary borrower to refinance in their name only, which means they'd need to qualify on their own credit and income. And if they can't qualify? Then the co-signer remains on the loan until it's paid off or the vehicle is sold. What if the primary borrower defaults? Then the lender pursues both parties. Your credit would be affected equally. Can I be notified of future late payments before they hit my credit? I can set up alerts. You'd receive notification at the same time the primary borrower does. Do that. She made the changes in the system. Hayes, if you don't mind me asking, is everything okay? Just protecting myself, I said, being proactive. Smart, she replied. A lot of people don't think about these things until it's too late. I left the bank with alerts activated and a clearer picture of my exposure. Everything was being documented. Everything was being positioned. That evening, I sat in my home office and drafted an email. Not to send yet, just to have ready. Dear Caleb, I've been thinking about our conversation at dinner earlier this week. While I maintain that I did not take money from Naomi's purse, I understand that you've chosen to believe her version of events. As a result, I need to establish some boundaries moving forward. Effective immediately, I will no longer be providing financial support beyond my existing legal obligations. This includes gifts, loans, emergency funds, or any other monetary assistance. I've also reviewed my position as a co-signer on your auto loan and will be monitoring that account closely. Any future late payments will require you to address them directly with the lender. I hope that in time, we can rebuild trust. But that rebuilding needs to start with honesty and mutual respect. Hayes. I saved the draft, but didn't send it. Not yet. Timing mattered. And right now, sending it would look reactionary, emotional, weak. But having it ready, knowing exactly what I'd say when the moment came, gave me something I desperately needed. Clarity. My phone rang. Victor Hale. Hayes, got some news. Naomi made a reservation for next Tuesday, same restaurant, same booth, if available. She specifically requested it. She requested the same booth? Exact words to the hostess. Said it had sentimental value. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That's not about sentiment. No, Victor agreed. That's about replaying a winning strategy. Can you make sure you're working that night? Already swapped shifts. I'll be there. Thank you. One more thing. The manager mentioned they're doing a security system update next week, upgrading cameras, which means they'll be reviewing all current footage to make sure everything transfers properly. When? Monday, day before the reservation. The pieces were aligning. Not perfectly, but close enough. Victor, if something happens that night, something that requires management to review footage, would they look at the previous week's recordings too? Depends on the situation, but if there's any question about a pattern of behavior or a specific customer, yeah, they'd pull multiple dates. Understood. After I hung up, I sat in the dark office, the only light coming from my computer screen. The draft email glowed white against the black background. Tuesday, 5 days away, 5 days to prepare, 5 days to make sure every detail was perfect. Because if I was going to do this, if I was going to force the truth into the open, I needed to do it right. One chance, one moment, no room for error. I closed the laptop and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. My mind kept running through scenarios, possibilities, potential outcomes. By the time dawn broke, I'd made my decision. Tuesday would be the reckoning. The weekend passed slowly, each hour marked by a strange calm I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't peace exactly, more like the stillness before a storm, when the air gets heavy and everything seems to be holding its breath. Saturday, I cleaned the house, not because it needed it, but because the routine gave my hands something to do while my mind processed what was coming. Vacuuming, dusting, organizing closets I hadn't touched in months. Physical work that required no thought. Sunday, I went to the plant. It was closed, but I had access. I walked the empty warehouse floor, listening to the echo of my footsteps on concrete. This place had been my refuge for 26 years. The one space where competence mattered more than charm, where results spoke louder than words. I thought about calling Caleb. Almost did, 3 separate times. Picked up the phone, pulled up his number, thumb hovering over the call button. But what would I say? What words existed that would change his mind before Tuesday? None. The time for words had passed. Now I needed something else. I needed proof. Monday morning, I went to work as usual. Routine was important. No deviation from normal patterns. Nothing that would suggest I was planning anything. But at lunch, I made a call to the restaurant. Asked to speak with the manager. "This is Morton's Corner," Holden speaking. "Hi, Holden. My name is Hayes Rellan. I had dinner at your establishment last Tuesday evening. Booth 7, I believe." "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" "I wanted to commend one of your staff members, Victor Hale. He provided exceptional service, very attentive, noticed details other servers might have missed. I'd like to make sure his work is recognized." There was a pause. Then, "That's very kind of you to call, Mr. Rellan. I'll make sure Victor knows you appreciated his service." "Thank you. I'm actually planning to return tomorrow evening. 7:30 reservation. Will Victor be working? Let me check." The sound of keyboard clicking. "Yes, he's scheduled for Tuesday evening." "Excellent. I'll look forward to seeing him again." I hung up. The seed was planted. A positive call about an employee, establishing that I was a satisfied customer, not someone with an agenda. If anything unusual happened tomorrow, there'd be context showing I'd simply wanted good service. Cover, layer upon layer of cover. Monday afternoon, Gerald called. "Hayes, I've been thinking about our conversation. If you're serious about documenting everything, you should consider keeping a journal. Dated entries, factual observations, no emotional commentary, just what happened, when, who was present. If this ever escalates legally, contemporaneous records carry significant weight." "I'll do that. And Hayes, whatever you're planning for tomorrow, be careful. The line between proving truth and creating problems is thinner than you think." "I'm not creating anything," I said. "I'm just having dinner." "Right." His tone suggested he didn't quite believe me, but wasn't going to push. "Well, good luck with your dinner." That evening, I laid out clothes for Tuesday. Not too formal, not too casual. The same level I'd worn to the first dinner. Consistency mattered. Everything needed to feel unplanned, spontaneous, natural. I reviewed the napkin sketch Victor had drawn, memorizing the layout. Camera positions, sight lines, where everyone had sat last time. Where they'd likely sit tomorrow if they requested the same booth. Then I went through my phone, checking that everything was charged, updated, ready. Not for recording, I wouldn't need that. But just in case communication became important, I wanted no technical failures. Finally, I drafted one more email. This one to my brother in Colorado, someone I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. Just a casual update on life, mentioning the family dinner tomorrow, nothing dramatic. Time-stamped, sent from my personal account. More documentation that I was proceeding normally, openly, with no hidden agenda. Tuesday morning arrived with clear skies and cool temperatures. October at its best. I went through my normal routine: coffee, shower, work. At the plant, I approved vendor quotes, reviewed shipment schedules, answered emails. Everything routine. Everything documented as a normal day. Taryn stopped by around 2. "You seem distracted. Something on your mind?" "Family dinner tonight," I said, trying to decide if it's going to help or make things worse. "Family's complicated," she offered. "But you're one of the most level-headed people I know. Whatever happens, you'll handle it right." "Thanks, Taryn. And hey, if it goes badly, there's always work. The warehouse doesn't judge." I smiled. "No, it just demands results." "Which you always deliver." After she left, I sat at my desk and opened the draft email I'd written to Caleb. Read it once more, still didn't send it. That would come later, after tonight, when the context would give it proper weight. At 4:30, I left work. Earlier than usual, but I wanted time to prepare mentally. Drive home, change clothes, arrive at the restaurant neither too early nor too late. The house was quiet when I got there. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, the same spot I'd stood a week ago after the first accusation, the same refrigerator hum, the same clock. But I wasn't the same person who'd stood here then. Something had shifted, hardened, clarified. I changed into the clothes I'd laid out, checked my wallet, keys, phone, everything in order. At 6:45, I got in my car and drove toward Morton's corner. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Beautiful in that way that makes you aware of endings and beginnings happening simultaneously. I parked in the same section of the lot I'd used last week, walked toward the entrance at the same pace, pulled open the door at 7:22, 8 minutes early. The hostess greeted me with a professional smile. "Good evening. Welcome to Morton's Corner. Hi, I have a reservation. Hayes Rellin, 7:30. She checked her screen. "Yes, sir, we have you down. Your party will be joining you. They should be here shortly." "Perfect. Right this way." She led me through the restaurant, past the bar, past the booths where other families were eating, laughing, living their uncomplicated lives. And then we were at booth 7. The same booth, the same burgundy cushions, the same lighting. "Your server will be right with you," she said, placing a menu on the table. "Thank you." I slid into the side, facing the entrance, my back to the wall, the same position I'd sat in last time. From here, I could see the entire dining area, the kitchen doors, the bar, the front entrance, and the small dark hemisphere in the ceiling corner that housed the security camera. 2 minutes later, Victor appeared. He approached the table with water, his expression neutral, but his eyes acknowledging me with the briefest of nods. "Good evening, sir. Can I start you with anything besides water?" "Just water for now. Waiting for others." "Of course. I'll check back shortly." He walked away, professional, giving no indication we'd ever spoken before. At 7:28, Naomi and Caleb entered the restaurant. I saw them before they saw me. Naomi in a dark blue dress, Caleb in slacks and a button-down. They looked confident, comfortable, like people walking into a space they controlled. The hostess gestured toward booth 7. Naomi's eyes found me, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, that I'd actually shown up, or calculation, recalibrating whatever she'd planned for tonight. They approached the table. Caleb's expression was guarded. Naomi's was unreadable. "Hayes," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. That same spot she'd occupied last week, the spot where her purse would rest against the wall. "Naomi, Caleb." I nodded to my son as he sat beside her. "Surprised you came," Caleb said. His tone wasn't quite hostile, but it wasn't warm either. "Why wouldn't I? After last week, I figured you'd avoid us." "I'm not the one who should be avoiding anyone." Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is this going to be a pleasant dinner, Hayes, or are you here to cause problems?" "I'm here to eat," I replied calmly. "What happens beyond that is entirely up to everyone's honesty." Caleb shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, if you're going to start making accusations—" "I haven't accused anyone of anything," I interrupted. "But since you brought it up, have you found Naomi's missing money yet?" "No," Naomi said quickly. "I haven't, which is why I know you took it." "Interesting logic. You haven't found something you claim was stolen, therefore I definitely stole it." "You were the only one near my purse." "I was never near your purse, but we've already had this conversation." Victor appeared with menus, his timing impeccable. "Good evening, folks. Can I get you started with drinks?" "Wine," Naomi said. "Red, whatever you recommend." "I'll have a beer," Caleb added. "Domestic is fine." "Just water for me," I said. Victor nodded and left. The table fell into uncomfortable silence. Naomi placed her purse in the same spot as last week, against the wall, next to her hip, that same cream-colored leather bag with gold hardware. I watched her do it, noting the deliberate placement, the way she glanced at me to make sure I'd seen. She was setting the stage, again. The question was, what was the play this time? Diane arrived 10 minutes later, breathless and apologetic as always. She slid in next to me, forcing me to shift closer to the wall. The same choreography as last week. "Sorry I'm late," she said, not looking at me. "Traffic." "Of course," I replied neutrally. Victor brought drinks. We ordered food. The conversation was stilted, careful, everyone dancing around the obvious tension. Naomi dominated again. talking about a new client she'd landed, some startup that needed branding consultation. Diane asked questions that weren't really questions. Caleb nodded in the right places, his enthusiasm rehearsed. I ate breadsticks and observed. Halfway through the meal, Naomi excused herself to the restroom, the same pattern as before. I watched her walk away, that cream purse left behind on the booth. Diane took the opportunity to lean toward me. Hayes, you need to apologize. This is tearing Caleb apart. I have nothing to apologize for. You're being stubborn. Just say you're sorry, whether you did it or not, and we can move forward. No. Why are you being so difficult? Because the truth matters, Diane, something you never cared much about. Her face hardened. That's not fair, isn't it? You spent our entire marriage telling me I was too passive, too quiet, not exciting enough. And now you want me to be passive again? To just accept a false accusation and apologize for something I didn't do? I want you to prioritize your relationship with your son. My son chose his wife over his father without asking a single real question. That's on him, not me. Caleb was staring at his plate, jaw tight. Dad, this isn't helping. What would help, Caleb? Me admitting to something I didn't do? Me letting a lie stand unchallenged because it's more comfortable for everyone? I just want this to be over. So do I, but it won't be over until the truth comes out. Naomi returned, sliding back into the booth with that same satisfied expression she'd worn last week. She glanced at her purse, then at me, then at Caleb. Everything okay? She asked, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. Fine, Caleb said quickly. We finished the meal in near silence. Victor cleared plates, brought dessert menus, refilled drinks. Professional, attentive, watching everything. When the check came, I reached for it. Caleb grabbed it at the same time. I've got it, Dad. It's fine, I'll cover it. No. His voice was firm. You covered last time. My turn. I let go of the check, watched him pull out his credit card, hand it to Victor, and then Naomi's hand went to her purse. The same gesture as last week, rifling through the bag, expression shifting from casual to concerned to alarmed. Here it comes, I thought. No, she whispered. No, no, no. What? Caleb turned to her immediately. My wallet. It's gone. The table went still. What do you mean gone? Diane leaned over, looking into the bag. I had it when I went to the restroom. I remember checking it. And now it's not here. Naomi's voice was rising. Someone took my wallet. Caleb's eyes swung to me. Dad. I haven't moved, I said calmly. I've been sitting right here the entire meal. Ask Diane. Diane hesitated, trapped. Well, you did reach for the check? After it was already on the table. After Victor had placed it between us. I never went near Naomi's purse. You must have, Naomi insisted. You're the only one on this side of the booth who could have reached it. No, I said. I'm not. Understanding flickered across Diane's face. She'd been sitting next to me. She'd been the one closer to Naomi's purse. But before anyone could process that, I continued. Besides, there's a simpler explanation. What? Caleb demanded. Your wife is lying. Naomi's face went pale, then red. How dare you? Just like she lied last week about missing money, just like she's trying to set me up again, and just like last week, there's a witness who can confirm I'm telling the truth. I gestured to Victor, who'd been standing a discreet distance away. He approached the table, his expression serious. Sir? Caleb looked confused. Victor addressed the table calmly. I've been serving this section all evening. I've had clear line of sight to this booth the entire time. Mr. Rellan has not moved toward the purse. He's remained in his seat throughout the meal. That's impossible, Naomi said. You couldn't have been watching us the whole time. Ma'am, it's my job to watch my tables, anticipate needs, notice details. He paused. I also noticed that when you returned from the restroom, you made a point of checking your purse before sitting down, and your expression suggested satisfaction, not concern. Naomi's eyes widened. That's ridiculous. You're lying. He probably paid you to say that. I'm not lying, Victor said evenly. And I'm certainly not being paid. I'm simply stating what I observed. This is crazy, Caleb said, looking between Victor and me. Why would you even be paying attention to? Because last week, I watched your father get accused of something he didn't do. Victor interrupted. I watched him sit there calmly while 3 people called him a liar and a thief. And I watched him walk out without defending himself because you all had already decided he was guilty. And that bothered me. So when I saw you'd made another reservation, I paid attention. The restaurant had gone quiet around us. Other diners were watching now, the same way they'd watched last week, but this time the story was different. "You're making this up," Naomi said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, ma'am, I'm not. And if you'd like, we can review the security footage. The camera in that corner," he gestured toward the ceiling, "has a clear view of this booth. It'll show exactly what I just described." Naomi's face went completely white. "The footage will also show what happened last week," I added quietly, "when you accused me of taking money from your purse. The camera will show I was never close enough to touch it. That I stood up, moved maybe 2 feet to let Diane in, and sat back down. That your purse never moved from where you'd placed it against the wall." "Dad," Caleb said, his voice strained. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your wife has been lying, both times, setting me up, creating incidents that make me look like a thief while she plays the victim. And I'm saying I can prove it." "That's insane," Naomi said. "Why would I do that?" "I don't know," I replied honestly. "Maybe you wanted to isolate me from Caleb. Maybe you enjoyed the power of making everyone believe you. Maybe you just don't like me. The why doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is the truth." Diane was staring at Naomi now, doubt creeping into her expression. "Naomi, when you came back from the restroom just now, did you check your purse?" No, I don't remember." "Because Victor said you looked satisfied when you did. He's wrong. He's lying. They're both lying." Naomi turned to Caleb, desperation in her eyes. "Caleb, you know me. You know I wouldn't make this up. Tell them." But Caleb wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, and for the first time in years, I saw uncertainty in his face. Not belief yet, but the beginning of doubt. "Dad," he said slowly, "if you can prove this—" "I can. The restaurant manager can pull the footage from both weeks. Victor can provide his statement. And I have documentation of every financial transaction between us, every loan I've covered, every time I've bailed you out when you couldn't manage your own finances." Caleb flinched. "What does that have to do with anything?" "It shows motive. It shows a pattern. You and Naomi have been taking my support for granted while treating me like I'm worthless. And when that wasn't enough, she decided to destroy my reputation completely." "That's not—" Naomi started, but I cut her off. "Your wallet is in your purse, Naomi. It never left. Just like your money was probably never missing last week. You created both incidents, and now you're caught." "Prove it," she said, her voice shaking. "If you're so sure, prove it right now." "Fine." I looked at Victor. "Would you please ask the manager to review tonight's security footage, specifically the moments after Naomi returned from the restroom?" Victor nodded. "I'll get him." "Wait," Naomi said quickly. "That's not necessary. This is all a misunderstanding. Maybe I did drop my wallet in the car. Maybe I'm confused. Let's just go." But Caleb was staring at her now, really staring, seeing something he'd missed before. "Naomi, check your purse." "Caleb, check it. Right now." Her hands trembled as she opened the bag, reached inside, and pulled out a wallet. The table went silent. I thought," she stammered. "I must have missed it when I looked before." "You didn't look before," I said quietly. "You knew it was there. Just like you knew the money wasn't really missing last week. You've been lying the whole time." Caleb stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need air." He walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Diane was staring at Naomi with an expression of growing horror. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Naomi insisted. "This is all a misunderstanding. Hayes is twisting everything." "No," Diane said firmly. "No, I don't think he is. I think Victor's right. I think you did check your purse when you came back. I saw you touch it, and you looked pleased with yourself." "You're wrong." "Am I?" Diane slid out of the booth, standing. "You know what? I don't even care anymore. This is between you and Caleb. But Hayes, I'm sorry. I should have believed you." She followed Caleb out. Naomi and I sat there alone. The restaurant noise gradually returned around us, conversations resuming, people returning to their meals now that the drama had passed. "Why?" I asked. "That's the only thing I genuinely don't understand. Why do this?" She didn't answer for a long moment. Then quietly, "Because you were always there, always steady, always reliable, and that made Caleb respect you, look up to you, and I couldn't compete with that, so I had to tear it down. By lying. By showing him you weren't perfect, that you were just like everyone else, flawed, capable of disappointing him." She laughed bitterly. "But I guess that backfired." "Yes, it did." I stood, pulled out enough cash to cover the bill and a generous tip for Victor, and placed it on the table. "Goodbye, Naomi." I walked out of the restaurant into the cool October night. Caleb was standing in the parking lot, his back to the building, shoulders shaking. Diane stood nearby, keeping her distance but present. I walked past them both without stopping, got in my car, started the engine. My phone buzzed as I pulled onto the street. A text from Victor. Manager reviewed the footage. Everything's documented. Let me know if you need an official statement. I sent back 2 words. Thank you. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Old habits. The sky was still dark, stars fading as gray light crept across the horizon. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the day begin. My phone was still off. I left it that way. At the plant, I arrived before anyone else. The parking lot was empty, the building dark except for emergency lights. I used my key card and went straight to my office. The familiar routine was comforting. Boot up the computer, check emails, review the day's priorities. Normal work, real work, the kind of work where results mattered more than politics. Taryn found me at 9. Morning, Hayes. How was your dinner last night? Revealing, I said. She waited, expecting more. When I didn't elaborate, she nodded. Well, if you need anything, let me know. Thanks, Taryn. At 10:30, my office phone rang. Internal extension. The front desk. Hayes, you have visitors. Your son and ex-wife. They don't have an appointment, but they're asking to see you. I looked out my office window at the warehouse floor below. Busy, productive, mine. Tell them I'm in a meeting. They say it's urgent, family emergency. I paused, considered, then made my decision. Send them up. Conference room B. 5 minutes later, I walked into the conference room. Caleb and Diane were already there, standing near the window. Caleb looked like he hadn't slept. Diane's makeup couldn't quite hide the redness around her eyes. I closed the door behind me but didn't sit down. Neither did they. You have 10 minutes, I said. I have actual work to do. Dad, please, Caleb started. 9 minutes now. Naomi left, he said, the words tumbling out. This morning. Packed her things and left. She's pregnant, Dad, 3 months, and she just left. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sympathy, nothing. That's unfortunate, I said. Unfortunate. Diane's voice rose. Your son's wife just abandoned him and you say it's unfortunate? What would you like me to say, Diane? That I'm sorry his wife turned out to be exactly what I knew she was? That I'm surprised she ran when her lies were exposed? She's carrying your grandchild, Caleb said desperately. Is she? I looked at him directly. Because I have no proof of that. Just like you had no proof I stole anything, but you believed it anyway. Caleb flinched. Dad, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You said that last night, in 17 text messages and 6 voicemails I haven't listened to. Then listen now. His voice cracked. I messed up. I believed her over you. I humiliated you. I was wrong about everything, and I'm begging you to forgive me. No. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Hayes, he's your son, Diane said. He was my son. Until he decided I was a thief without asking a single question. Until he shouted at me in a public restaurant, told everyone his wife never lies, made me into a criminal in front of strangers. That person isn't my son anymore. People make mistakes, Diane insisted. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. He chose her over me, and now he has to live with that choice. What about the baby? Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. What about it? If it exists, it's not my problem. You made your family. Now you deal with it. Dad, please, I need you. You needed me last week too, but you didn't want me. You wanted someone to blame, someone to humiliate, someone to make yourself feel superior to. Well, you got what you wanted. Now get out of my office. Hayes, Diane started. Out, both of you, before I call security. Caleb was crying now, openly, his face crumbling. Dad, I can't do this alone. The business is struggling, the car payments, the house. Everything's falling apart and I don't know what to do. And there it was. The real reason for the visit. Not apology, not reconciliation. Money. I walked to the conference room phone and dialed an internal extension. Taryn, can you bring me the Caleb Relin financial file? Yes, the one we discussed. Conference room B. I hung up and looked at my son. You want to know what you're going to do? You're going to figure it out. Like an adult? What does that mean? It means the money stops. All of it. The bailouts, the loans, the emergency funds, everything. Dad, I can't... You can't what? Survive without my money? Then maybe you should have thought about that before you called me a thief. Taryn knocked and entered, carrying a folder. She handed it to me, glanced at Caleb and Diane, then left without a word. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of every financial transaction I'd documented. Every check, every transfer, every co-signed document. $20,000 for your house down payment, I said, reading from the papers. $15,000 for Naomi's business. $32,000 co-signed on your car. Multiple smaller amounts totaling another $12,000. $67,000 in 3 years. Caleb stared at the documents. You kept records? Of course I kept records. I'm not careless, no matter what you all seem to think. I closed the folder. And now I'm calling in the debt. What? His face went white. Every loan you promised to repay and didn't. Every gift that was originally framed as a loan. All of it. You have 30 days to begin repayment or I take legal action. You can't be serious. I'm absolutely serious. My lawyer has already drafted the paperwork. Dad, I don't have that kind of money. Then sell something, get a second job, figure it out. You're an adult, Caleb. Act like one. Diane stepped forward. Hayes, this is cruel. You're punishing him because you're angry. No, I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I looked at Caleb again. You want to know the really interesting part? That big client your company has? The one that accounts for 30% of your revenue? I introduced them 4 years ago. A favor I did because I was proud of you and wanted to help. Caleb's expression shifted from confusion to horror as understanding dawned. One phone call. I continued quietly. That's all it would take. One phone call to mention that the connection came through me, and that I no longer feel comfortable maintaining business relationships that benefit someone who publicly accused me of theft. You wouldn't I? I moved toward the door. Get out of my building, both of you. And Caleb? Don't contact me again. Not for money, not for forgiveness, not for anything. We're done. Dad. We're done? I opened the door and walked out. Down the hallway, down the stairs. Onto the warehouse floor where Miguel was operating his forklift and the machines hummed with productive noise. Behind me, I could hear Caleb calling my name, Diane's voice joining his. But I didn't turn around. I walked past the inventory racks, past the loading dock, out the back door into the cold October morning. And for the first time in 30 years, I smiled. Not a polite smile, not a professional smile. A real one, because I'd won.